parent-teacher night, my daughter's teacher said to me, "It's so nice to finally meet you. Usually your husband comes with the other woman." I stood there frozen in the classroom doorway. My daughter's teacher, Mrs. Riley, smiled at me like she'd just said the most normal thing in the world. "I'm sorry, what?" I asked. Mrs. Riley's smile faded. She glanced nervously at the empty chairs beside me and said, "Oh, I just meant, your husband usually comes to these meetings with someone else. I thought you knew." Well, this is great news. My husband wasn't here tonight because he was supposedly working late on a big project, but now this teacher was telling me he'd been coming to school events with another woman. Who? I said, my hands clenching into fists. Who has been coming here with my husband? She looked uncomfortable now, like she was realizing she'd made a terrible mistake, but I needed to know. "I can describe her if that helps," she offered quietly. "She's an attractive woman," she said, choosing each word carefully. "Maybe in her early to mid-40s, dark hair, always very well dressed. She brought in homemade cookies for the class last month." My fists tightened. My husband had come home with cookie crumbs on his shirt that day. He said they'd ordered dessert at a work lunch. "She seems to know a lot about your family," the teacher continued. "She knew about Emma's peanut allergy, her favorite color, even some inside jokes you have at home." I felt sick. This woman knew intimate details about our daughter, about our life. "Actually," Mrs. Riley said, looking even more uncomfortable, "during the last parent-teacher conference, she held your husband's hand across the table while we talked about Emma's reading progress. That meeting was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, my husband came home late smelling like perfume, expensive perfume that I definitely don't wear. When I asked about it, he said he'd hugged a coworker whose mother had passed away. The school secretary overheard us talking and walked over. "Oh, you're asking about the woman who comes with your husband?" she said. "I've seen them together at least 5 or 6 times. They always seem very comfortable with each other." My heart was pounding now. Very comfortable. What did that mean? "I actually saw them in the parking lot after the school assembly last month," the secretary added. "They were hugging. It looked pretty affectionate, to be honest. He told me he couldn't make the assembly because of a last-minute client meeting, but he was here, with her. And there were those restaurant charges," I said, more to myself than anyone else. My husband's credit card had shown charges at expensive restaurants on nights he claimed he was at school events with other parents. I'd brushed it off at the time. One of the other parents I was friends with stopped when she heard us. "Wait, are you talking about the woman who's been coming with?" She looked at me and her face froze. Honestly, I was wondering what was going on, but I didn't want to say anything. "I've seen them leave together in the same car, at least 3 different times. I just assumed you had some kind of arrangement or something." "An arrangement?" My husband was leaving school events in the same car as another woman, a woman who knew everything about our daughter, a woman who held his hand and hugged him in parking lots. Mrs. Riley pulled out her phone. "I think I have a photo from the school fundraiser last month. Maybe that will help you figure out who she is." My hands were white from how tight my fists had become as I waited for her to find the picture. This was it. I was about to see the woman my husband had been sneaking around with, the woman he'd been lying to me about for who knows how long. Mrs. Riley turned her phone toward me, and I stared at the screen. Standing next to my husband at the fundraiser booth, wearing a designer dress and holding a plate of cookies, was my mother, my own mother. I just burst out laughing. I couldn't help it. The relief that flooded through me was so intense that I doubled over, tears in my eyes. "That's my mom!" I gasped between laughs. "That's my mother! She's been helping out because my husband and I both work crazy hours." Mrs. Riley's face turned bright red. "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I just assumed. I thought." The secretary looked mortified. Of course my mom held his hand. She's affectionate like that with family. Of course they hugged in the parking lot. Of course they went to restaurants together after school events. Of course she knew everything about Emma. She's Emma's grandmother. At least that's what I told myself. I was still laughing about the whole ridiculous situation, about my mom having an affair with my husband. The idea was so absurd I couldn't wait to tell her about it. So I called her when I got into my car. "Mom, you won't believe what just happened," I said, still giggling. "I went to parent-teacher night tonight and Emma's teacher thought you were my husband's mistress. Can you imagine? She said you've been coming to school with him and everyone thought you were the other woman." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then my mother's voice came through, shaky and panicked. "Oh god, you know, sweetie, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. Please don't hate me." The laughter died in my throat. My car was suddenly very, very quiet.